Welcome to the second episode of SAJIDA Kathan. It's March today, a historical month for us as a nation and for women all over the world. While March marks the beginning of a 9-month-long struggle for us as a nation, it also marks the beginning of struggle for equity and equality for women, which began on March of 1857. In today's discussion, we will talk about how gender role affects women in all spheres of their lives. We'll try to understand the distinction between equity and equality, and our guest will share her perspective on how to promote equity for women and at the same time ensure that women have similar access to resources as men. To discuss all these with us, we have none other than Barrister SAJIDA Kubir. She is the Director of Legal Safeguarding and Employee Engagement at SAJIDA Foundation. She is also the first female advocate from Bangladesh to have a tri-jurisdictional qualification from Bangladesh, UK, and Australia. Welcome to the show, Appa. I think you are the best person with us to talk about this. So, without further ado, let's get straight to the point. It's been more than 50 years that we've been talking about equality and equity, about how gender discrimination has been a huge thing. But we are still here. Doesn't seem like much has changed. Why do you think that we're still voicing our concerns over all these issues?
It would be a mistake to say nothing has happened or nothing much has happened. Things are happening, albeit slowly. There was a time when women were not allowed to vote, women were not allowed to work. That is not the case now. So it's important to focus, while we focus on the things that we have done already, it's important to focus on what else needs to be done. There is still, I agree with you, there is much to do. It's important to address the needs of the day. So whatever the needs of women were maybe 50 years ago has changed and has evolved. So it's important to ask, what do women need now, considering the changing circumstances, considering their increased role in the workplace, considering that women and girls are encouraged to be educated and seek higher education. So are we giving them what they actually need today?
So from what I understand, that it's not about giving them that space to work. Like we say that, okay, মেয়েরা তখন এটা করতেই পারে, সো মেয়েরা তখন লিডার আছে, আমাদের নেত্রীও তো একজন মহিলা. So I think we are beyond that. It's more about not just facilitating যে আচ্ছা আপনাদের access আছে. It's more about the mindset that we have, right? The mindset that we have that gender role dictates what you should do. What is your take on that?
That is actually very true. Even though there's a lot of women at work, there's a lot of women in leadership within SAJIDA Foundation even. Yet it's all about how we see women in society, how we see in the household. So gender role still very much defines a woman's responsibility and woman's role. So a woman might be a director, a senior director, or even a CEO of a particular organization or a company, yet she is primarily responsible for everything in her household. There are exceptions, I will say, but the norm is no matter who she is at the workplace, no matter how busy she is in the workplace, after she comes home, her household chores are waiting for her. So in order to ensure that women are able to function to the best of their ability, certain things need to change. It's not about access to workplace or access to jobs or access to institutions. It's about how we perceive women as they are today. So if we say, just switch the gender roles, say if you think about a man who is exactly in the same position in the workplace, having the same responsibility, what is his routine like when he goes home? Does he have to worry about whether the cooking is done? Does he have to worry about the kids, whether they have done their homework? They don't have to do anything like that. So when a woman is doing exactly the same thing in her workplace, why aren't we extending that kind of privilege to her? But is it a privilege?
Yes.
So why isn't it a no-brainer at this stage? কেন বলতে হবে যে নারী বলে তোমার এটা তো তোমার দায়িত্ব, মা বলে তোমার এটা দায়িত্ব, বাট এটা বাবাও তো আছে, অন্যান্য পরিবারের সদস্যরাও আছে. So why is that such an issue these days? So I feel that we need to think differently and we need to be a little bit kinder about how we perceive women at this stage because they are working equally hard at work. It's a lot of pressure, as we all know. So ওই সাপোর্ট সিস্টেমটা শুড বি কোয়াইট অর্গানিক এট দিস স্টেজ। ইট শুড নট বি সেইং দ্যাট বাবার কাছে বাচ্চারা যখন থাকে বা বাবা আজকে একটা দিন হোমওয়ার্ক করে দেবে, ও হিজ বেবি সিটিং, হি ইজ নট, হি ইজ প্যারেন্টিং। সো ওইটার চিন্তাধারাটা আমাদের চেঞ্জটা আসতে হবে।
Yeah. So a few keywords that came out from your answer or your take was privilege. One thing is that see that it has seeped in so much into our psyche that we call it a privilege, whereas it should be a norm. Second thing that you said, that what actually came to my mind is, so where is the issue in the sense that in terms of awareness, when I was young, I remember, I think you also remember this cartoon of Raju and Meena, where they switched the role because Raju was saying, "Ami eto kosto kori saradin, ami keno eta pabo na." I think that was a very early layer of awareness and education that was built into us, right? And this is like 28 years back. But you see now, even when we are in such a privileged society where we have access to knowledge, where we think that seemingly our elders are more open-minded, it's still there. It's still, whenever a husband is doing a shared duty, right? It's still, he gets a pat on the back, like, wow, you're doing this, right? And that's just funny. So I think off camera we had this discussion, like, how do you go about marriages in these things? And when you talk about roles, do you have this discussion before you're married? That tomar role eta ba amar role eta, how does it go about?
It's not a bad thing to do this due diligence, to be honest. So before we decide to get married, I think this is a conversation I think is important. মানে একটু heavy duty হয়ে যায় কনভারসেশনটা, কিন্তু মানে বিয়ের আগে when you decide to spend your life with someone, I think it's important to understand where we stand on some very key issues, because this can be a make or break in a relationship. So it's good to know what the mindset is. Is it someone, if in case of a woman, if she's saying that, am I marrying someone who's expecting me to take the lion's share of responsibility in the work at home while I actually have a job, or am I marrying someone who wants me to give up my career entirely and would want me to stay home, or is it someone who is okay with either as long as it's my choice? So it's important to know, and it's also, I think, part of getting to know the person you're going to commit the rest of your life. So while romance is good, candlelight dinners are good, but before that, this conversation should take priority as well. Absolutely.
Say the man you're marrying, he's also being brought up by another woman, right? So there needs to be a mindset that's instilled, right? A mindset of that. I think we had this conversation off camera as well, how you're bringing up your son to be used to the fact that you have to do these things by yourself. You cannot just be like mommy's son, like mommy will do this for me, mommy will do this for me in the long run. So is this a South Asian thing, or is it a global thing that all all boys are brought up in a more privileged mindset? Do you think it's a global thing?
It's global. আমাদের শুধু দোষ দিলে হবে না. It's actually global, because I live in Australia at the moment, and I have friends who have married people who are not Bangladeshi. They're either Australian or they're from some other Southeast Asian backgrounds. Their issues are pretty much the same. So men don't do enough at home, they still complain. So আমরাও যেরকম বলি যে বাবারা বা হাজব্যান্ডরা বাসায় কন্ট্রিবিউট করে না, at least in terms of the household, that's the case there as well. So ওই প্রিভিলেজ কথাটা যে প্রথমে বললাম, it's not just us, and it's not just an Asian concept, it is actually there. But when you mention children, I have a son and a daughter, so I always tell my son that I personally took a career break to be with my children. I worked from home, I did consultancies. So every time I speak to my son about my role in the household, I always tell him that don't expect that whoever your future partner is to do what I did. I did it because it's my choice. Your father did not tell me that I had to take a break, I had to take it easy so I could look after you all. So এই জিনিসটা আমি কিন্তু ওকে বারবার করে বলি যে you're lucky that I'm here, but don't expect that this is how things happen. Because at the same time, when I have a conversation with my daughter, I'm telling her that, look, your choice matters, your opinion matters. You don't have to give up everything that you stand for your family, for your household, for everything. So your voice matters. So দুই দিকে কিন্তু দুই ধরনের মেসেজ দেওয়া হচ্ছে। সো ওখানে যদি এটা আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ডিং না আসে, there'll be a major gap in terms of what will actually happen and what is actually expected. So, but I believe that uh, I have friends, colleagues who have children of the similar age. Their message to their sons, it's good to see, is actually like that. But they're saying that এটা কিন্তু হবে না, মা কিন্তু সবসময় বাসায় থাকে না. You need to learn how to be independent. So little things that they said, why aren't you can make your own breakfast, or you can do your own laundry. Little things you do around the house, you clean your room. These are little things that sometimes we think we don't tell them, but it's good to see mothers are trying to do that with sons, especially sons. With daughters, it's a completely blanket message that you matter, your opinion matters, and you think about yourself as well as your family, but don't be that sacrificial lamb that সব কিছু ফেলে ফুলে বাসায় বসে থাকো just because my family needs it to be. So it's good to see that messaging is the rhetoric is changing. So I have the privilege of knowing women like this. I'm hoping that's the norm all around.
I'm not too sure about the messaging that goes on in different societies, say in urban extreme poor communities. How do you think the mindset is over there? Because now the literacy rate is up, right? Our mortality rate is better. So what is the next step towards making sure, or making a pathway where people from different walks of life, different income class, they can also be in a place where this rhetoric is there, right? I'm sure the rhetoric is not there. So what is the way forward over there?
Because এতক্ষণ আমি আসলে যা বললাম, it's coming from the perspective of someone who can be labeled as privileged. So our journey and their journey will be very different. And আমাদের empowerment যত না দরকার, because we would say that being born in privilege, you have some form of empowerment which others don't have. So supportive parents, encouragement to study, go for higher studies, work, be independent. This was a message that we grew up with. But it's important to focus our attention from that, not to the minority, but to the majority. So how things are changing there. So some of the positives that I have seen is that there's a lot of encouragement for girls to go to school. So say, for example, people who work in my house, my staff who are there, all of them have their children in school. And they want not only government schools, private schools. So they go to private schools, they go to private tuitions. And when I ask them, I have asked them quite a few times, 16 বছর বয়সে কি বিয়ে দিয়ে দেবে নাকি? বলছে না 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 দিব না। বলছে পড়াবে, পড়াতে চায়। So that has changed a lot. So people who were not so privileged when they were born, they don't want their children to be in the same position once they are of age. So they see a different future for their sons and their daughters. আগে যেরকম ছিল যে ছেলেদেরকে কাজে পাঠানো হতো বা পড়ানো হতো, hoping that they would take care of the rest of the family. That is still there. But মেয়েদেরকে কিন্তু ওই যে পড়ানো, কাজ করানো, ওই জিনিসটা কিন্তু এখন আছে, and it's quite prevalent. So when I say staff, I'm talking about maids, drivers, security guards, who themselves are not educated, but they have the foresight to say that, na, আমি আমার মেয়েদেরকে পড়াবো. Because recently in our family, we got the news of this girl, her name is Bithi. Her mother was a staff in my sister's house. Now she has graduated with a degree in biotechnology from Brack University, and she has gotten a job in one of the leading pharmaceuticals in Bangladesh. But her mother was always a staff. But the mother had the foresight to say that, okay, there's someone who's going to help me educate my daughter. I will take her as far as she can go. So that has changed, which is positive. But in this particular group, like the majority, Bangladeshe jodi amra dekhi, poverty is an issue. Finances is an issue. So sometimes when the intention is there to take the daughter wherever she wants to go, how far she wants to go, sometimes it's not realistic. So we have to see whether there are financial aid opportunities available, whether there's a lot of generous families who, whether they want to sponsor education of girls. These sort of facilities need to be there, because when there's a financial crunch in the family, the education of the girl or the education of children in general do not take priority. Because as we have seen during COVID, there was a record dropout of especially adolescents from school, because people need to survive. So তখন কি হলো, the first thing is স্কুল বন্ধ করে দাও, সবাইকে কাজে পাঠিয়ে দাও. And what has happened after COVID, we have seen there's a rise in child marriage, because girls had to be taken care of, so they were married off, and boys were sent to the workforce. So we have to see the context, that it's not just the intention of the parents to say that আমি আমার মেয়েকে পড়াবো, আমার মেয়ে আমার মতো সার্ভিসে থাকবে না, আমার মেয়ে চাকরি করবে, কিন্তু do they have those enabling circumstances for them to be able to do that?
I want to emphasize a bit more on what we spoke about a few minutes back. Gender roles, right? Now it is accepted and it is encouraged that women go to work and they earn the money and do everything, put their fair share of everything. But in workspace, there are so many obstacles that they face, right? Starting from, you can talk about harassment, you can start from also male colleagues not understanding this, where they're coming from. They have the stereotypical complaints, মেয়েরা তো আপার এটা বলবেই, বাদ দেন, আপা মেজাজ খারাপ, হয়তো মাসের ওই সময়. Anything, anytime a guy is ever allowed to lash out, but when a woman lashes out, everyone goes behind the back, goes like, আপা মনে হয় মাসের সময় আসছে, আমরা কথাবার্তা না বলি, which is just stupid. Frankly, that is just stupid. So in Sajida, how do you think the organization itself supports women towards like, mitigating all these things?
SAJIDA has some formal procedures in place in order to address complaints of, say, sexual harassment, if there's behavioral issues, exploitation, etc. So that formal procedure is there. But SAJIDA, what it believes in is actually working not on a reactive role, like if a complaint comes, we do something about it. SAJIDA believes in working in more preventative measures. So raising awareness. What kind of awareness? Is it formal trainings? No. Constantly giving the message that this is how things work at SAJIDA. So certain things, laying down the rules. So constantly talking to employees about it, whether in training, whether in informal conversations, whether sending out emails or communication materials with messages saying that this is what is expected of you at SAJIDA, and SAJIDA hopes that this kind of behavior will continue at home as well. So just because you work here, just because your salary comes from here, doesn't mean that you should feel a compulsion to act in a certain way. We're hoping that this is what you take in. So সাজেদাতে দেখেছি যে এরকম মেসেজ যখন সবসময় যেতে থাকে, particularly senior management top down থেকে যখন যায়, it slowly changes how people work and interact with each other. Because SAJIDA কিন্তু আমাদের, there's a lot of female employees now, and the average age of employees at the head office is 35 years old. So we have a lot of young, fresh graduates coming in, people who have worked somewhere else for 3, 4, 5 years, they're coming in. So there are some people to whom it's a no-brainer. This is how they behave. They don't see gender. But there will be people who still are very much influenced by gender. So like what you said, things like that. So if a male yells, uni onek kora, and একটা মেয়ে একই জিনিস করলে, hormonal, and that kind of a thing. I mean, আমরা বলি, হাসি, সবই বলি, but that's not fair, because that shows that what's going on up here, that's going on how we see things. But I'm happy to say that at the head office, what I have seen, a lot of them it is actually a no-brainer that I have a colleague with me who happens to be female, but they treat each other with respect, with compassion, and it's a very comfortable relationship. So there's a lot of women who have a positive experience in the workplace, but there are, I will say, there are still people there who who are still unsure about what to do. So একটা dialogue আমি খুব শুনি, which I absolutely detest. So this is what they say, that এখন তো কিছু বলা যাবে না, কিছু হলে তো মিটু মুভমেন্ট চলে আসবে। I'm saying, well, it's very easy to steer clear of the Me Too movement. There are few things you really have to say to be in the Me Too movement trap. It's actually not a trap. There are certain things you just don't say. If you think it's the gray area, someone might take offense, ওই ছোট স্ক্রিনিংটা করা is actually not a bad thing. So এরকম গ্রুপও কিন্তু আছে, but the hope is, I think it's everywhere really. I think the hope is that organizations continue to encourage positive behavior, not seeing gender stereotype roles, but treating people with just kindness, respect, whoever they are. So I think Sajida is doing a good job in that, I would like to say, in terms of what I see in culture. But like I said, there are still men, there are still colleagues out there who just don't get it. So there will still be people who still comment on a female colleague's outfit. ওড়নাটা যদি না থাকে, সে যদি একটা টি-শার্ট জিন্স পরে থাকে, to some people it's still an issue. But these little things make your female colleagues feel uncomfortable because they don't want to be seen again through a gender role. If she is dressed decently, এটা নিয়ে তো কমেন্ট করা, সমালোচনা করা আসলে কিছু নাই। I think it's in 2023, this is something, this is just, it just doesn't go with all the, as we claim we're modern, it's a modern society and all that. So for people like that, Sajida continues the awareness in terms of changing mindsets, trying to ensure that things like this don't happen. They will still be there, but it's a work in progress, I would say. It's a continuous effort.
It might seem like I'm fixated on negativity, but I would like to point out something, that sometimes there are work given, and there's also this consideration that I'm considering that she's a woman and so her workload should be this. Do you think it's fair to make that assessment that no, she's a woman, her workload should be this, and then the person feels that okay, I'm being very good because I'm seeing her as a woman, or should it be like unequal, doesn't matter if it's a woman or a man? ওই জায়গাটা কি ওটা আসে সেন্সিটিভিটি ব্যাপারটা, ওখানে কি হয়, ওখানে একটু ক্লাউডেড হয়ে যায় যে আমরা হয়তো মেয়েদেরটা দেখে দিচ্ছি, নাকি এভাবে দেখা হচ্ছে যে মেয়ে ছেলে সবাই কাজের টাইমে সবাইকে সেমভাবে কাজ দিব?
Ultimately it should be about qualification. আপনি যদি জেন্ডার থাকে সিভি থেকে সরিয়ে দেন, would you hire the same person for the job? I think you would. মানে leave it up to the woman to find out whether she can do a job or not. এখন সে আমাদের মাইক্রোফাইন্যান্সের কাজে ওখানে মোটরসাইকেল চালাতে হয়, দূরে দূরে যেতে হয়, এটা তো মেয়েরা করছে না, করছে তো। Who are men or for anyone else to decide whether someone can do this or not? সিভি থেকে জেন্ডারটা সরিয়ে তখন দেখেন, কোয়ালিফিকেশন যদি মেলে, কোয়ালিফাইড হলে কাজ করবে। It should not be about what we have a preconceived idea of what women can do. Let them decide. I think they can do that.
I think the way you answer it is just no-brainer, because these are no-brainers. But then it should be. But then here we are, 2023, still talking about it. I know how you hate Women's Day.
I really do. I'm sorry. I really do.
Why could you tell us why you hate it so much?
আসলে উইমেন্স ডে সেলিব্রেশনটা না একটু একঘেয়ে হয়ে গেছে। So for the last God knows how many years I've been seeing Women's Day being celebrated. There's a gift for women. There is, we're all dressed in purple. There's usually a round table or a seminar where we talk about the issues that women face, the discrimination, how bad men are, what we should be doing. And it's usually the seminar in a room filled with 100 other women. There is no diversity there. So আমার কথা হচ্ছে, হ্যাঁ, it's nice there's something called Women's Day, because there's also Men's Day, to be fair. But the conversations that we have, like what we are talking about now, why don't we talk about it throughout the year? Say in Sajida, for example, if my intention is to make this a gender-friendly workplace, a workplace where women are comfortable, where they're safe, why isn't this a conversation that I can have of every quarter? Then I can decide, acha, আমি pilot করে দেখি, say XYZ, I want to offer flexible working hours for women after they come back from maternity leave, say. This is something I can pilot. I can look at this, say, okay, let's see. I have a small daycare type facility upstairs. Why don't I look at that? Are women or even men say, বাচ্চাদেরকে নিয়ে আসছে নাকি? Is this something, এটা দিলে কি মাদের সুবিধা হবে নাকি বা বাবাদের সুবিধা হবে নাকি? So this is something, I think this is it should be an ongoing process. What usually happens is that Women's Day উপলক্ষ করে আমরা অনেক বড় বড় কথা বললাম কিন্তু পরে আর কিছু হলো না. I think this should be a project. Whether it's an organization, anywhere that we are, let's try it out. এই কনভারসেশনটা যেরকম আমরা সাজাতে চেষ্টা করি, that this is part of what we do, even though it's not a program, this is something which is necessary to ensure all our employees are happy, they're healthy. This is somewhere there where they want to come and work. So my hatred for Women's Day is the lack of follow-up. So I would rather have this conversation multiple times a year. I rather speak to people who are affected by this, learn from them, what do they need, and see whether that is something an organization can provide. Demands are actually very simple, to be honest. They want flexible working hours. They want, yesterday I was just having a conversation with our CEO. We were just having a brainstorming thing about childcare and all that. So sometimes what if you let our women employees bring their kids to work? Our CEO was telling me that I don't mind if children are running around the office. To me, that's happy noise. And things like that. And I had the privilege sometimes to bring my son to work with me. He used to sit in front of me, he used to draw, he used to do his homework. It's really nice. So little things like that. The demands are not much. It's not always about higher pay, it's not always about designation. It's about little things that make their everyday comfortable. So why don't we do that?
With that, I would like to conclude our show. One line that came out of our discussion is let the women decide. I would like to urge all men to truly understand the theme of this year's International Women's Day, equity for all. We should work ourselves towards developing an understanding that women don't need our help. They just need us to move out from their way and to enable them to live a life where they can fulfill all their potential. In this show, we talked about a lot of aspects, but what I would like everyone to take away is that next time we sit here in International Women's Day, that we don't have to have the same tagline and repeat the same thing, that women need to be included everywhere and they need equity. We should start working from it right now. Till next time, I wish you all a life of health, happiness and dignity.